Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, MC, and thank you to Bab Masilela for according me this opportunity to read Jayendra Naidoo's remarks that he would have shared with us as he agitated today's roundtable discussion. We welcome those that are returning guests of this wonderful legacy program. You are more au fait about what we do in this business roundtable. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, usually, as the MC has explained, the agitator will put a couple of pointers as a nub for a later discussion. So it would serve you well to just make a note of those things that you would want to expand on because they resonate with you, or to anchor further. So without further ado, let me just read what Mr. Naidoo would have put before us as he agitated for this morning's discussion. Greetings to everybody present here today. I am deeply honored to have been asked to speak at this roundtable, and I sincerely regret not being able to join you in person. Nevertheless, I hope to be able to share with you some thoughts and observations on the present social, economic, and political situation in South Africa and its neighboring economies, and the challenges particularly for business. My intention is to stimulate the discussion with a brief input. Jayendra has participated in trade union and political movements in South Africa since mid-1970s. Post-1990, he participated in multi-stakeholder initiatives such as the National Peace Accord and later NEDLEC social dialogue process. In the past decade, he has found himself moving even further to become part of organized business, serving as a member of the Board of Business Leadership South Africa. In these capacities, he has heard and has used many times the phrase, "The country is at the crossroads." While in his opinion, it had generally been true that we have, as South Africa, been at the crossroads during these trying times and period, and society has generally found a positive way forward, he thinks it would be fair to say that the general sentiment today amongst almost all economic participants would be that the country is most definitely at a crossroads of major dimensions. As the most diversified and sophisticated economy in sub-Saharan Africa, if not the continent, South Africa is on the edge of losing its precious investment grade rating, which has been so carefully built up over the years since the advent of democracy. He views the first quarter of 2016 as having been a significant demonstration of negative growth rate against a backdrop of massive youth unemployment and social inequality. The media, weekly, it broadcasts new major scandal in government or some state-owned company, some new tensions between political allies, some court decision overruling a government decision, some confrontation involving members of parliament, some story of political assassinations, etc., etc. On the eve of local government elections, as well as the ruling party's elective conference, it is not a pretty picture. It is a picture that reflects a fair degree of risk and instability. Nevertheless, the rating agencies have left our credit rating unchanged. The tax authorities have collected a record amount of taxes. Business CEOs and governments have been actively collaborating over the past 6 months to advance a common set of initiatives. Our currency appears to have settled in a stable, albeit a lower range. Electricity load shedding has ended and the system generally continues to operate all by itself. The story of South Africa, in Jayendra's opinion, is of a somewhat fragmented and incoherent underachiever, which at the same time has far too deep economic, cultural, and political sophistication to fail. So how do we deal with the crossroads of 2016? That's where he would have started his agitation. How have these crossroads changed from earlier times? And as our economist from DNA Economists was trying to draw the scarlet thread from last year's discussions to today, the question becomes, how have these changed in a space of 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and above? And most importantly, how have we changed since earlier times? Many, if not all of us here today, reflect the changes of the past 2.5 decades. This event commemorates number 43 Trelawney Park as a base for political activists advancing a struggle in exile to liberate South Africa from the rule of apartheid, to the modern day struggle of these same activists now acting as leaders, operating in all walks of a democratic and free country, struggling, however, to deliver the fruits of liberation. As with number 43 Trelawney Park, most of us have moved from the position of activists outside of the system into the position of functionaries of the new establishment and are responsible for its policies, for its practices and achievements or failures. It really doesn't matter if some of us now serve in government while others are in business or the private sector. The responsibility to make this society what we have dreamt it would become lies on all of our collective shoulders. In previous times, activists found themselves either in exile or in the trade unionist movement and civic organizations in the country, or underground structures, or in the apartheid organizations, building international solidarity with our struggle, whilst at the same time, all contributing to a common goal of social change. Like many of us here, Jayendra says that he's among those who have found their way into the world of business, from which we have to define a role that contributes to that greater good and responds to the crossroads of today that he earlier alluded to. Going into business should not be seen as making an exit from the ongoing struggle to create a better life for all. On the contrary, entrepreneurs should be regarded as economic activists, serving a positive social function. It should be a means through which one can make a valuable contribution. Entrepreneurs, especially those who have started without the luxury of significant finances, they face many challenges and many stresses. And those challenges and stresses tend to keep them focused on their business affairs and making them very polite when dealing with their customers and funders in the public sector and corporates and banks. Nevertheless, the first priority of sustainable economic development and transformation must include the role of entrepreneurs in starting and growing enterprises, in creating innovations, in employing workers, in trading with suppliers and customers, in investing in skills and development and productivity, and of course, in collecting and paying those taxes, VAT, pay as you earn, and company taxes. As a former trade unionist, Mr. Naidoo says he will not go so far as to say this is a revolutionary activity, but it is undoubtedly a fundamental social function and the act of building an efficient, competitive, and successful business must be considered a progressive and patriotic role. Economic growth is the result of vibrant enterprises producing quality and affordable goods and services, and doing so productively and competitively. Laws, regulations, policies, enforcement, and so on are all very vital, and they shape the environment. But the main actors in economic growth are enterprises, which some of you and I are in this room. Creating inclusive growth, thereby generating wealth, as well as broadening the distribution of that wealth that is created, requires a positive understanding and a benign relationship between the public service and businesses. We are too often caught up in the paradigm of past hostilities between the notion of white monopoly capital and the developmental state. The recent shift in approach by the state government towards promoting black industrialists and economic leaders, whilst it has the risk of state capture and cronyism, could turn out actually to be quite a positive means to reshape perceptions within the broader community about the positive social role that business enterprises have in contributing into this patriotic constituency. Moving beyond the role of business within the enterprise, the sustainability of social progress is promoted when the mechanisms for exercising checks and balances in society are robust and are capable of wielding power. The South African Constitution has created a powerful set of institutions, including the courts. To this must be added an extra constitutional institution of civil society, which was so important then and continues to be important today. Business Leadership South Africa, which today comprises most of the leading companies on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, has recently adopted the policy to protect core public institutions and the Constitution. It remains to be seen exactly what emerges from this strategic drift of Business Leadership South Africa. But no doubt, the vast access businesses in general, as well as organized business, have to human resources and finance, can be an invaluable long-term impact on the health of these institutions and public processes, such as the appointment of the new public protector. Finally, Jayendra would have said to us, as he agitates further for the discussion that we're just about to have, he would have said he thinks it goes without saying that despite correct and meaningful actions directed at the long term, history is shaped by spontaneous and short-term events. History is shaped by spontaneous and short-term events. While there is never a shortage of strong opinions to be found amongst business leaders, there is often rarely an effort to publicly address a concerted consensus on key issues. Be it an unpopular decision that is made by the President of the Republic, or to a serious regulatory breach by a private sector corporate. Business organizations have to find their voice and be prepared to fight hard on matters that actually count. Mr. Naidoo is optimistic about the future, as I'm sure most of us are, as I'm sure most of us have been over the past decades. He believes that crisis can produce positive change. For example, when the generation of 1976 and 1977 were short, their student organizations banned and many fled into exile, some of them coming through number 43 Trelawney. It led to the strengthening of the external liberation movement and the growth inside the country of civic and trade unionist organizations. Ironically, the end of apartheid, which resulted in some young white people losing their public sector occupational privileges, resulted in them moving into business, with a huge growth in income in the white population, according to Stats SA. Similarly, today, the current conditions hold the seeds of new opportunities. It is at that point that he would have left us to agitate on what the future holds and what actually those new opportunities are. I thank you.